Now, the end of the age, I'm afraid I feel is right upon us.
But at this point, this is considered a mass suicide investigation.
They gave us the tools to brainwash ourselves. Literally wash out our humanness from our brains.
The name Heaven's Gate conjures up feelings of intrigue, skepticism, and a sinister air of mystery. What led seemingly normal people to give up their lives, families, and even themselves? We must disentangle the intricate web of beliefs that bound the members of this group to comprehend the actual stories of the mysterious group. Heaven's Gate began as an American new religious movement. It was created in 1974 by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, known in the movement as T and Doe respectively. When Nettles and Applewhite first met in 1972, they embarked on a spiritual quest and claimed to be the two witnesses of the biblical book of Revelation. By the middle of the 1970s, they had gained a following of several hundred individuals. But before we go into the details of this doomsday cult, let's examine the lives of its founder. Marshall Applewhite was a former soldier and the son of a Presbyterian minister, and he started dabbling in biblical prophecy in the early 1970s. In March 1972, following his dismissal from the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, due to allegations of a relationship with one of his male students, he met Bonnie Nettles, a married nurse who was 44 years old and fascinated with theosophy and biblical prophecy. The duo first met when Applewhite went to visit a sick friend at the hospital where she worked. After their first meeting, Applewhite said he felt he had known Nettles for a very long time and came to the conclusion that they had interacted in a previous life. Nettles also convinced him that he had a divine mission by telling him that their meeting had been predicted to her by extraterrestrials. Applewhite and Nettles read writings by Helena Blavatsky, R.D. Lang, and Richard Bach, while reflecting on the life of St. Francis of Assisi. They read chapters from the New Testament that concentrated on Christology, asceticism, and eschatology. After reading these books, Applewhite and Nettles' opinions were firmly established. They came to the conclusion that they had been given higher-level minds than ordinary people and had been chosen to fulfill biblical prophecies. In a brochure they published, they made a covert allusion to Applewhite by claiming that Jesus had previously lived as a Texan. They also came to the conclusion that they were the two witnesses mentioned in the book of Revelation. As a result, they periodically attended churches or other spiritual groups to discuss their identities. They frequently referred to themselves as the Two or the UFO Two. They believed they would die, be resurrected, and then be taken on a spaceship in front of other people. They used this occurrence, which they referred to as the demonstration, as evidence for their views. Understandably, some religious organizations did not accept these concepts. In May 1974, Sharon Morgan, who had already abandoned her children, became the Two's first convert. After a month, Sharon parted ways with the two and went home to her family. Despite Morgan having given the duo permission to use her cards, Nettles and Applewhite were detained and accused of credit card fraud. The accusations would be dropped, but a regular investigation revealed that Applewhite still owned a rental automobile that he had stolen from St. Louis 9 months earlier. After serving a total of 6 months in prison, mostly in Missouri, Applewhite was freed in the early months of 1975 and later reconnected with Nettles. At some point, Applewhite and Nettles decided to make contact with extraterrestrials, and they started looking for supporters. They advertised gatherings, published flyers for events, and attracted followers they dubbed the Crew. Adults over the age of 18 were required to join a community where members gave up their property and led a life of asceticism without luxuries. All resources were shared among the closely knit community. the group always carried a roll of quarters and a $5 bill with them whenever they were out in public. To sustain the ascetic way of life, castration was deliberately undergone by 8 of the group's male members, including Applewhite. The group's first castration was done by one of its members, a former nurse, but this attempt was unsuccessful, nearly led to the patient's death, and forced at least one member to leave Heaven's Gate. Since then, subsequent procedures was performed in a medical facility. The group made money by providing expert website development services under the brand Higher Source. In September 1975, Applewhite and Nettles delivered a sermon at a Waldport, Oregon hotel hall. Approximately 20 people joined the group after selling their worldly possessions and bidding their loved ones farewell. Later that year, in one of the first national broadcasts on the emerging religious movement, Walter Cronkite reported on the disappearances on CBS Evening News. A score of folks have disappeared. It's unclear if they've been abducted or taken on a purported journey into eternal. Applewhite and Nettles had made arrangements for the group to hide. Since then, Doe and T, as the two now refer to themselves, have been leading close to 100 members across the nation while camped out in tents and sleeping bags and begging in the streets. The gang was able to concentrate on Doe and T's philosophy of helping crew members reach a higher evolutionary level than human, which they claim to have already attained while avoiding notice by the authorities and the media. The group used various recruitment methods, including destitution, false god spirits, and envelopment with sunlight for meditative healing. In April 1976, the group stopped recruiting and became reclusive, instituting strict behavioral guidelines. The group transformed from a loosely organized social group to a centralized religious movement. The group identified themselves by the business name Higher Source and used their website to proselytize and recruit followers. Rumors began spreading that the upcoming Comet Hale-Bopp housed the secret to their ultimate salvation and ascent into the kingdom of heaven. The group initially believed they would be biologically and chemically transformed into extraterrestrial beings and transported aboard a spacecraft to heaven, referred to as the next level. However, after Bonnie Lou Nettles, T, died of cancer in 1985, the group revised their doctrine to include the leaving of consciousness from the body as equivalent to leaving Earth in a spacecraft. The group declared against suicide, as it would not allow their consciousness to leave their human bodies to join the next level. They believed that to be eligible for membership in the next level, humans would have to shed all attachment to the planet and give up all human-like characteristics. They also believed that evil space aliens, called Luciferians, falsely represented themselves as God and conspired to keep humans from developing. Over time, the group's beliefs were modified, such as changing the way one can enter the next level, changing their descriptions, placing more importance on the idea of Satan, and adopting other New Age concepts. One such concept was the ancient astronaut hypothesis, which posits that only a select few members of humanity will advance to this transhuman state, and only those who choose to join Heaven's Gate follow Applewhite and Nettles' belief system and make the sacrifices required by membership will escape human suffering. The group rented a sizable home in Rancho Santa Fe, California, called The Monastery in October 1996. It was a 9,200 square foot estate that was close to 18341 Colina Norte, later altered to 18239 Paseo Victoria. They made a monthly cash payment of $7,000. The group bought $1 million per person alien abduction insurance that same month, covering up to 50 members and covering alien abduction, impregnation, or death. Marshall Applewhite taped himself on March 19 and 20, 1997, discussing mass suicide and the only way to evacuate this Earth in Doe's final exit. Applewhite and his 38 followers prepared for ritual suicide so their souls could pass through Heaven's Gate before it closed, claiming that Comet Hale-Bopp was the sign the group had been looking for, and that there may have been an unidentified flying object trailing the comet. Members had the belief that a UFO would transport their souls to a level of existence above human once they passed away. According to Applewhite, this level of existence was both physical and spiritual. They prepared by having each person record a goodbye message on tape. The group of 39 individuals, dressed in identical black shirts and sweatpants, Nike Decades athletic shoes, and armband patches reading Heaven's Gate Away Team, committed suicide by taking phenobarbital mixed with applesauce or pudding and washing it down with vodka. They secured plastic bags around their heads to induce asphyxiation. Each member carried a $5 bill and 3 quarters in their pockets, which was standard for members leaving the home for jobs and a humorous way to tell others that they had all left the planet permanently. After each death, a living member would arrange the body by removing the plastic bag from the person's head and posing the body neatly in its own bed, covered by a square purple cloth for privacy. The identical clothing represented unity for the mass suicide, while the Nike Decades were chosen because the group got a good deal on the shoes. The group also had a saying, "Just do it," echoing Nike's slogan. They pronounced do as dough, reflecting Applewhite's nickname. The 39 adherents, 21 women and 18 men between the ages of 26 and 72, are believed to have died in 3 groups over 3 successive days, with remaining participants cleaning up after each prior group's deaths. Among the dead was Thomas Nichols, brother of actress Nichelle Nichols, best known for her role as Uhura in the original television series of Star Trek. Leader Applewhite was the 3rd to last member to die, and 2 people remained after him. Alternative packages were sent to numerous Heaven's Gate-affiliated individuals, and at least one media outlet, the BBC department responsible for Louis Theroux's Weird Weekends. Rio D'Angelo received a package containing 2 VHS videotapes, a letter, and a back door unlocked to allow access. After leaving the house, D'Angelo's boss encouraged him to make calls alerting the authorities. The tragedy stunned the entire globe and sparked a lot of discussion on the influence of cult leaders and the frailty of people looking for meaning and purpose. The event was heavily covered by the media, which provided information about the cult's beliefs, methods, and members' daily lives. It clarified the potentially harmful influence of charismatic leaders and the risks associated with excessive religious beliefs. According to reports by a former member, when I first joined Heaven's Gate, I was searching for something greater than myself. Marshall Applewhite's teachings seemed to offer answers to life's biggest questions. Also, in a statement of one of the survivors, I was fortunate enough to have left the cult before the mass suicide occurred. It was a devastating event that shook me to my core. I realized then that the promises of salvation were nothing but delusions. What do you think of this case? Let us know in the comments. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more true crime cases. Thanks for watching.